In 1946, three Soviet artists stepped into the bunker where Hitler had spent his final hours. They walked through the ruined hallways, saw the overturned furniture, the mess, the empty bottles, everything that was left behind after the fall. Years later, with every detail etched in their memory, they painted a scene that would change everything. A painting that showed Hitler defeated, not as a tragic leader, but as a man ignored by his own, trembling in a doorway while those closest to him drank, slept, or simply looked away. The painting was an instant success. It won the Stalin Prize. It was reproduced across the country, and it wasn't just art, it was revenge. A way to make it clear that they hadn't just defeated the enemy, they had ridiculed him at his most pathetic. When this painting was first presented in 1948, it wasn't meant to be just a work of art. In fact, it was part of a very deliberate strategy: Soviet propaganda. The Soviet Union had just emerged from a devastating war, and it needed to build a strong narrative around its victory, not just through speeches, but through powerful images. The End, painted between 1947 and 1948 by the artist collective Kukrynyksi, served that purpose perfectly. The scene doesn't depict a battle, it shows something far more symbolic. Hitler surrounded by defeated officers, ignored, broken down in what appeared to be his final hours. This representation aligned perfectly with the message the Soviet regime wanted to convey to its people. Fascism wasn't just defeated, it was discredited, humiliated, reduced to a grotesque shadow of what it once was. The painting was exhibited in an official show commemorating the 30th anniversary of the Red Army, and its creators received the first-class Stalin Prize in 1949. The End functioned as one more cog in the propaganda machine, an image designed to reinforce a single idea, that the Soviet regime hadn't just triumphed, it had utterly crushed its most feared enemy. Kukrynyksi wasn't a single artist, they were three: Mikhail Kupriyanov, Porfiry Krylov, and Nikolai Sokolov, three Soviet illustrators who began their careers creating political cartoons for magazines like Crocodile, and gradually became a visual cornerstone of an entire era. Since the 1930s, their direct and satirical style had become instantly recognizable across the Soviet Union. They mocked Mussolini, Hitler, and any figure the regime labeled as an enemy. And they didn't do it subtly. Their drawings were bold visual attacks, designed so that anyone could grasp the message at a glance. During the World War II, their role became even more crucial. They contributed to the TASS windows, a series of giant posters displayed in storefronts and on walls across the country. They were like large-scale political memes, but in wartime, literally. So when the war ended and the Soviet Union wanted to reinforce its narrative of total victory, there was no question about who to call. This time though, it wasn't a cartoon, it was an oil painting. Large, detailed, and carefully composed. A scene that would portray Hitler's downfall as a symbol of fascism's complete collapse. The most fascinating part is how they managed to paint this scene with such a high level of detail, because the end feels almost like a cinematic reconstruction of the bunker. Just days after the war ended, the three artists traveled to Berlin and entered the actual bunker where Hitler had spent his final hours. They walked through the hallways, saw the destroyed rooms, took notes, and absorbed the atmosphere. There were no bodies, but there were traces, remnants of what had been. Back in Moscow, they recreated everything in their studio, the walls, the furniture, even the lighting. They built a sort of theatrical set of the bunker, piece by piece, so they could paint it with precision. And since no one wanted to pose as Hitler, because who would, they took turns themselves. One would put on the coat, another the mustache, another would slump into the chair. They acted out every role themselves, like a private stage performance, while taking references for the canvas. The technique they used was oil on canvas, painted in the style of socialist realism, meaning clear, recognizable imagery with a direct message, no abstractions. But what's truly impressive is that, despite coming from the world of caricature, they achieved a scene that feels almost theatrical, full of atmosphere, tension, and carefully composed details. If you look closely at the back wall, there are paintings hanging. And that wasn't just an artistic choice. There really were paintings in the bunker, as you can see in this photo. But here, they're crooked, misaligned, as if no one cared to keep order in that place anymore. And that makes me wonder, what kind of paintings were hanging there? There's also a shadowy figure just behind Hitler. Who could he be? But before we answer those questions, I want to ask you, if you're enjoying this video, leave a like and check out our catalogue. There you'll find reproductions of paintings like this one, so you can start your own collection. Shipping is free worldwide. You'll have access to over 600 carefully selected artworks, each with its own story, so you can bring home a true work of art that lasts a lifetime. And by shopping in our store, you're helping me keep creating videos like this one. You'll find the link in the description. Now, let's continue. Hitler had a genuine interest in art. He was a great admirer of Arnold Böcklin and Franz von Stuck, both artists known for their heavy symbolism and melancholy. In fact, we know he owned a copy of Isle of the Dead, a painting that, if you think about it, fits perfectly in this quiet, ominous setting. So it wouldn't be surprising if a piece like that was actually hanging on those walls. When we take another look at the full scene, what dominates is a sense of disorder. There are opened bottles on the table, one officer is asleep, another lost in thought. No one seems to pay attention to anything happening around them. One of them even appears to have his suitcase ready to escape. And in the middle of this atmosphere stands Hitler, not in the center but in the doorway, standing still, as if unsure whether to enter or stay out. No one looks at him, no one stands up. He's alone, in every sense of the word. His gaze is lifted, aimed at something we can't see. Is he looking at the ceiling, the sky, whatever noise is coming from outside? Maybe it's just the expression of a man hearing the end approaching. And in the background, almost hidden in the shadows, there's a figure barely visible. Could it be Goebbels? There's no direct confirmation, but it would make sense. He was one of the few who stayed in the bunker until the very end. He doesn't interact with anyone. He seems detached, as if he's no longer part of what's happening. The scene isn't grand or heroic. There are no speeches, no final gestures. What we see is a complete absence of leadership, a space where everyone is lost in their own collapse. And that detail, the fact that not even Hitler is acknowledged, says everything. This isn't a painting about death. It's an image where hierarchy no longer matters, a suspended moment where all that remains is decay.